read a little bit from Myths and Legends, an illustrated guide to their origins and meanings by Philip Wilkinson. I left off over here, which was the creation of humankind. So it says, unlike many cultures, ancient Greece did not have a single story narrating the origins of humanity. Greek myths mention several attempts at creating humans, or mortals as they were known. 3 of these attempts failed before the current race of humans finally emerged. Although it is not clear who is responsible for their creation, however, the origins of key cultural skills, such as fire making, are firmly attributed to the Titan Prometheus, who is portrayed as a friend of humanity. Can I get some coffee? There's a caption here. Prometheus steals fire. Prometheus stole a spark from Mount Olympus and wrapped it in a stalk of fennel, where it burned safely as he carried it to humanity. At the bottom here it says, the forge of Hephaestus. Is that how you say it? Hephaestus? Prometheus found his fire in the workshop of Hephaestus, where the craftsman god, and some say the Cyclops, forged Zeus's thunderbolts and other powerful weapons. The myth. The first attempt at creating a human race took place when the Titans, led by Cronus, ruled the cosmos. The result was the Golden Race, a group of people who lived an ideal existence, without work or aging, and for whom life was one long feast. When the people of the Golden Race finally died, their death was like a peaceful sleep. Nevertheless, it left the earth unpopulated. Intent on filling up the void, the Olympians created the Silver Race, who lived for a long time but grew very slowly to maturity. Their children were brought up carefully by their mothers and spent 100 years as babies before reaching adulthood. However, they turned out to be dull and unintelligent people, fighting continuously among themselves, and once they became adults, they tended to die quickly. These qualities, together with their refusal to worship or even respect the gods, exasperated Zeus, so he banished them to the underworld. Zeus then crafted a new race out of clay. The people of this race wore bronze armor and used tools made of the same metal, so they were called the Bronze Race. Like the Silver Race, they were aggressive and destroyed themselves in ruthless battles. The human race. Finally, the current race of humans appeared. Some say that the great Titan craftsman Prometheus was its creator. Whether or not he actually created humanity, Prometheus certainly became its protector. He taught the humans many important skills, including navigation and medicine, and showed them how to make sacrifices by keeping some of the meat for themselves and offering the rest to the gods. Once the people killed a bull, but could not agree on which part to offer the gods, Prometheus cleverly wrapped the meat in the bull's skin and the bones in its fat. Zeus chose the bones covered in fat and became so angry at the deception that he refused to give fire to the humans. The theft of fire. Taking the side of humanity, Prometheus stole fire from heaven and carried it to the earth so that the people could cook their food and heat their homes. Zeus punished Prometheus for the theft by having him chained to a rock, where an eagle came to peck at his liver every day. The Golden Age. During the Golden Age, the world was ruled by Cronus, known to the Romans as Saturn. It was a time of peace and tranquility, and there was no war or injustice, and the golden race did not have to work because enough food was readily available from the plants and trees. In later eras, the Golden Age became a byword for a time in the distant past when things were much better than the present. The idea of the Golden Age became fashionable in the Renaissance, 1350 through 1550, when Italian artists and writers rediscovered the culture of ancient Greece, and this classical era became a favorite subject for painters. The Golden Race. Renaissance artists saw the Golden Age as a time of such peace that humans could live side by side with animals without any fear of attack. Cronus. Despite his violence toward his own children, Cronus is often seen as a gentle, just, and kind ruler of the Golden Age. He was worshipped as a harvest deity. Prometheus bound. As a punishment for stealing fire from the gods, Zeus had Prometheus chained to a rock in a place said to be on the borders of earth and chaos. Here, he was condemned to suffer while an eagle pecked at his liver, which constantly repaired itself so that the torture would continue. Zeus decreed that Prometheus should remain bound until another creature offered to be bound in his place. After 1,000 years, a wounded centaur called Chiron offered to take Prometheus's place. When he arrived at the rock, Zeus turned Chiron into a constellation of stars, while the Greek hero Heracles killed the eagle, ending Prometheus's agony. Over here it says Aeschylus. The Greek dramatist Aeschylus, who lived in the 5th century BCE, wrote several plays about the myth of Prometheus. Prometheus's punishment. The eagle came each morning to peck at Prometheus's liver all day long, then left in the evening. By night the liver repaired itself, ready for the next day's torment. And the side here it says Pandora. Zeus wanted to punish the humans after Prometheus stole fire for them, so he, or some say Hephaestus, created a beautiful mortal woman called Pandora. She married Prometheus's brother Epimetheus, who took her to earth. The gods gave her many gifts, which she kept in a jar. When she opened the jar, it contained plagues and disasters, which condemned humanity to a life marred by misery. The only positive thing in the jar was hope, the sole consolation for the human race. A storage jar. Artists often portray Pandora carrying a box, but Greek sources describe her bearing a pithos, or large storage jar. Apollo. Portrayed as a handsome young man, the god Apollo had power over many aspects of life. Patron of archers, his bow brought pain to humans, but he was also a god of healing and father to the mythical physician Asclepius. He was the god of music and the arts and an accomplished player of the lyre, or lyre. The son of Zeus and Leto, Apollo was also worshipped as the god of light and the sun. The lyre of Apollo. Or is it lyre? I think it's lyre. Once, when Apollo went on a journey in pursuit of one of his lovers, he left his fine herd of cattle untended. Hermes, who had long admired the creatures, saw that they were left alone and decided to steal them and hide them in a cave. But Apollo, who had the gift of prophecy, knew exactly where the cattle were, and went to find Hermes and demand his animals back. When Apollo arrived, Hermes began playing an instrument that he had created from the intestines of one of Apollo's cattle. Apollo was enchanted on hearing the music of the lyre and agreed to exchange it for the cattle. Apollo with his lyre. The lyre of Apollo, also called the kithara, was originally made with strings stretched across the shell of a tortoise. Hermes. Both a trickster and the messenger of the gods, Hermes wore winged sandals to enable him to fly between Olympus and Earth and the underworld. Apollo and Daphne. When Apollo scorned the archery skills of Eros, the god of love, Eros decided to take revenge. He shot Apollo with a gold-headed arrow to make him fall in love, but shot the object of his desire, Daphne, with an arrow tipped with lead, so that she would reject him. Apollo chased Daphne, but she would not give in to him, and as she ran, she prayed to Zeus to be transformed into something that would save her from Apollo's pursuit. Zeus responded by turning her into a laurel tree. Eros. Eros was the son of Aphrodite, from whom he got his beauty, and Ares, from whom he inherited his love for mischief. Daphne. When Zeus turned the fleeing Daphne into a laurel tree, Apollo made a wreath from her leaves, which he wore as a crown. Apollo and Delphi. When Zeus's wife Hera found out that her husband had an affair with Leto, she decided to take revenge on her and sent a great serpent known as the Python to attack her. The snake lurked around the great peak of Mount Parnassus and laid waste to the area of Delphi. Apollo killed the serpent with a bow and arrows given by Hephaestus, the divine craftsman. Afterwards, Delphi became sacred to Apollo, and his shrine was built there. The Pythian Games were held there every 4 years to commemorate Apollo's triumph over the Python, and Apollo had been associated with Delphi ever since. The activities at the games include poetry and music competitions, in addition to several athletic events. The Temple of Delphi. The Temple of Apollo at Delphi, first built around the 7th century BCE, stands on a hillside and was originally surrounded by statues of mythical Greek heroes. Apollo killing the Python. The gods slew the mighty Python with his poison-tipped arrows. The healing power of Apollo was balanced by the ability to kill with the deadly poison and disease his arrows bore. The Oracle of Delphi. Apollo had the power of prophecy, and at Delphi, his priestess, known as the Pythia, delivered oracles as she sat on her tripod seat, holding laurel leaves and a bowl of water from the Cassotis spring. She answered people's questions while in a trance-like state. These questions could be on matters of political and religious policy, as well as inquiries about the questioner's future. Since the Pythia's words were hard to understand, priests stood by to interpret them for the listeners. However, these interpretations were also puzzling and difficult to understand, but often they came true in the most unpredictable ways. The flaying of Marsyas. The satyr Marsyas was just as accomplished a performer on the double flute as Apollo was on the lyre. Marsyas thought that he was the better musician and challenged the god to a contest. Apollo agreed on the condition that the winner could punish the loser in any way he chose. No one could decide who was the better player until Apollo suggested they both play their instruments upside down. This worked with Apollo's lyre, but not with Marsyas's flute. So Apollo was judged the winner. He punished Marsyas by skinning him alive. Musical duel with Marsyas. Marsyas was foolish to tangle with Apollo, who tricked him into losing the musical challenge, and punished him for his impudence in one of the cruelest ways imaginable. Poseidon and the flood. Many ancient Greeks lived on islands or in settlements close to the coast, so their lives were dominated by the sea. Consequently, the sea god Poseidon, a bringer of violent storms, who also controlled natural forces such as earthquakes, was one of the most powerful gods of Mount Olympus. But he longed for more power and became involved in a dispute with Athena for the great honor of being the patron deity of the city of Athens. Poseidon. The god of the sea is often shown as a bearded man holding a trident and enthroned in a giant clamshell or aboard a shell-like chariot pulled by dolphins or seahorses. The dispute with Athena. Poseidon was with his trident, and Athena with her spear made formidable opponents, although they decided to settle their dispute peacefully. The myth. Poseidon and Athena both wanted to be the controlling deity of the city of Athens. Rather than declaring war and fighting a battle, the two gods decided that they would settle their dispute by competing to provide the best gift for the city's people. The sea god climbed the Acropolis, the hill overlooking Athens. When he reached the top, he struck the ground hard with his trident, and a saltwater spring began to flow. Then Athena came to the Acropolis and offered her gift, the first olive tree to grow in the city. The gods' judgment. Zeus summoned the other gods from Mount Olympus to judge the gifts and decide which of the two was greater. The appearance of the spring was impressive, but salt water was of little use to the people. The olive tree, on the other hand, provided a source of olives, and their oil was useful for both cooking and lighting. Olive oil was valuable not just to Athenians, but also to those with whom they traded. So the tree could both nourish the people of Athens and make them rich. They would be able to use the olive wood too, to construct things. King Cecrops, the ruler of Greece, confirmed that such a tree had never been seen on the Acropolis. After hearing all the evidence, Zeus declared Athena to be the winner of the contest. She became the city's patron deity, and the place was named after her. The coming of the flood. Poseidon was furious when he heard the result of the competition. He took up his trident and smote the sea many times, causing a great storm. The waters rose, and the plain of Eleusis, where Athens stood, was flooded. The waters covered the plain for a long time, but finally they subsided, allowing the Athenians to repair their city. They built a temple to their new goddess, Athena, who would bring them prosperity, but also made offerings to Poseidon to placate the angry god. Poseidon and the beasts. Poseidon was linked closely with the vitality and energy of animals. Two creatures especially associated with him were the bull and the stallion. Both were singled out by the Greeks for their sexual potency and violence. During his sexual exploits, Poseidon sometimes took the form of a horse, as on the occasion when he was pursuing the goddess Demeter, who had turned herself into a mare. The destructive bull that rose from the sea in some myths, such as that of Hippolytus, is also a manifestation of Poseidon's power. Stallion. One myth tells of how the first horse grew from the semen that Poseidon had spilled on a rock. Pasiphae and the Cretan bull. After a curse from Poseidon, the queen of Crete, Pasiphae fell in love with and mated with a bull sent by the sea god. The offspring of this union was the Minotaur. As it grows. Other classical sea gods. The Greeks worshipped several other sea gods. Although they were not as powerful as Poseidon, some of them were linked with particular sea creatures. For example, Glaucus was associated with fish, while Proteus was a herder of seals. Others possessed special abilities. Triton, for example, was famous as a musician who played on the conch shell. Proteus was also known for his great wisdom, although he did not like answering people's questions. It's wise of him. Glaucus, originally a fisherman, Glaucus was made immortal when he ate a herb with magical powers. He became one of the minor gods of the sea. Proteus. Renowned for his wisdom, Proteus was called the Ancient One of the Sea. He often changed his shape to avoid being questioned. Same. Triton. Half fish, half man, Triton was a familiar deity of the sea. Some myths say there were several Tritons. Poseidon and Odysseus. Homer's Odyssey describes the return of the tragic hero Odysseus from Troy to Ithaca as a series of mishaps at sea. Most of these were due to Poseidon and came about because Odysseus had blinded the Cyclops Polyphemus, who was the sea god's son. The poem describes vividly how the god stirred up storms and tempests, which wrecked Odysseus' ship and drowned his companions. Many of the perils Odysseus faced, such as the whirlpool Charybdis, were the offspring of Poseidon. Poseidon stirs the waves. Sometimes Poseidon smote the sea with his trident to create stormy waves, and sometimes he stirred them up with it. Temples to Poseidon. As a powerful deity, Poseidon was widely revered, and some of his temples have survived. He was not always worshipped as a sea god. Some temples were dedicated to Poseidon Hippios, Poseidon of horses, and many people worshipped a form of Poseidon who was a god of plants. At least one of his temples in Greece, though the temple at Sonion in Attica is sited on a spectacular cliff top overlooking the sea, a clear reminder of the deity's sphere of influence. Boat races were held there in honor of the god. Temple at Sonion. Poseidon's temple at Sonion could be seen by ships far out at sea. Now it survives as an evocative ruin with 2 rows of columns set on a stone platform. So, I'll continue reading this in another video, I think. Or, yeah, I think I'll stop there. So, next time I'll read Dionysus. So, yeah. Hope I helped you fall asleep a little bit. Thank you for watching my videos and subscribing and everything. Hope it helped you fall asleep a little